My name is Hafsa Sen, and the topic that I have conducted my research on is the reasons behind homosexual and heterosexual men's infidelity, also called cheating. So let's begin. So several studies have been conducted on this topic so far. The social scientists have either come up with biological factors, cognitive factors, or social factors. However, the problem with these studies was that they either mentioned one of these factors or just a combination of two of them. And my study hopes to see all three factors while determining why infidelity occurs. And before we move a bit forward, I just want to let you know that my personal interest in this topic is because I've been harassed by my managers. It wasn't too serious, it was just verbal harassment, but it did make me uncomfortable. And since my managers were in relationships, I was just later on curious to find out why uh, they wanted to commit infidelity. And the other reason I chose the topic of men was because I wanted a smaller sample size and I wanted to analyze it easily. And in order to analyze the data, I just selected two Reddit posts. One was on heterosexual men and the other was on homosexual men. So let's move forward. The research questions that I hoped to answer were the following. One, why do heterosexual men cheat? Two, why do homosexual men cheat? And three, do heterosexual and homosexual men have the same reasons or different to commit infidelity? So, as I mentioned before, past research have been conducted on this topic. So let's talk about them. Uh, one of the one of the social scientists who conducted research on this topic was Rosenberg, and he gave a biological reason behind it. He said that a part of the brain that controls emotions isn't functioning properly in the people who cheat. Arnaki et al. Also gave a biological reason. He said mate abundance and mate scarcity affect whether people cheat or not. He said that mate, mate abundance leads to people cheating on their partners, whereas mate scarcity leads people to not cheat on their partners. Chen et al. Saw that biological and social factors both affect whether partners cheat or not. He stated that facial dysmorphism, that is, the ability to detect whether someone is attractive or not, determines whether someone cheats, and the viewing of pornography also affects people's desire to cheat. And while studying a sample of heterosexual and homosexual men, they saw that facial dysmorphism, that is, the ability to detect attractiveness, was present in both homosexual and heterosexual men. However, homosexual men watch pornography more, which is why they had a higher chance of cheating on their partners. The study conducted by Beckhorn looked at male rickshaw drivers in India. Before we move forward, I just want to let you know rickshaws are a type of public transport in India and are mostly driven by men. And he saw that these male rickshaw drivers assumed different labels while interacting with their wives, prostitutes, and female customers in front of their wives. They assumed themselves as loyal husbands in front of prostitutes. They became sexually needy men in front of their female customers. They became asexual men so that their female customers don't feel uncomfortable from them. And in front of their other rickshaw drivers and away from these female customers, they change again to heterosexual men by showing their attraction towards their female customers. In this way, these drivers were able to satisfy their sexual urges when they were away from home and at the same time being faithful to their wives. And the study conducted by Wysocki and Childers saw that biological and social factors affect people's desire to cheat. These are income, age, education, race, marital status, religious affiliations, work status, and cyber sex. Agnesberger and Greitmeyer found that cognitive factors instead play a role. They stated specifically that moral disengagement, that is, the dismissal of morals, leads to people to cheat on their partners. And of course, we also came across this topic in our own course, Sociology of Sexuality. Among them were Alicia Walker's article, This is the Reason Why Men Cheat, and Deconstructing Monogamy by Frank and D. Lemater. In the article written by Walker, we saw that the reason why men cheat is to get emotional satisfaction, whereas women get to do it to get sexual satisfaction. And even though before cheating, men let their wives or girlfriends know that they're not getting the emotional satisfaction that they need, however, their wives or girlfriends dismiss them, and this is the reason why they end up cheating on their wives or girlfriends. And D. Lemater and Frank found that heterosexual men define infidelity in different ways. Some of them define it as just viewing pornography, others view it as having sex but not producing babies, and they also categorized these couples as secretly non monogamous and consensually non monogamous. The first category refers to couples who were committing infidelity, but they were doing it secretly. The other category refers to the couples who were also committing infidelity, but their partners knew that they were. So, for this research method, as I had mentioned before, I am looking at two Reddit posts. These are titled as Why Do Men Cheat and Reasons Why You Have Cheated. I provided the links for both of them on my presentation. And just to let you know, the first one about heterosexual men was written by a woman. You could tell just by the title of the username and by the content of the post itself. The second one was written by a homosexual man, and this could also be determined by looking at the username and the content of the post. And just to let you know, I only looked at the content of the post and the first 10 comments that were included on these posts. Uh, and the comments that were unrelated to the post were excluded. And just letting you know, I also conducted a qualitative and quantitative content analysis on these posts and comments. So, what I found was that biological factors only were mentioned in 2 out of 10 comments. Cognitive factors only were mentioned in 1 out of 10 comments. Social factors only were mentioned in 1 out of 10 comments. Cognitive and biological factors were mentioned in 1 out of 10 comments. Social and biological factors were mentioned in 1 out of 10 comments. This means if you look at biological factors, whether they were with one category or were alone, they were altogether mentioned in 4 of the 10 comments. And the comments that I included in the other category were 5. This means that 5 out of 10 comments were included in the other category. Now let's move on to the findings about homosexual men. So, 2 of the comments mentioned biological factors only. Cognitive factors were not mentioned at all. Social factors were mentioned in 3 out of 10 comments. Biological and social factors were mentioned in 2 out of 10 comments. This means with the homosexual men too, with along with different categories or separately, biological factors were mentioned in 4 out of 10 comments in total, and in the other category, only 3 of the comments were mentioned. And here's the graphical illustration of the factors, and I'm sure you can already see that in the heterosexual men area, biological and other categories are more bigger than, and in the homosexual um, illustration you can see that social factors and other factors are in greater proportion, and biological factors also have a sizable area. Uh, and the reason, anyway, moving forward. So, When we look at all of these posts, as I mentioned before, uh, four comments in each post mention biological reasons, which means that homosexual and heterosexual men's biology is blamed for their infidelity regardless of their sexual orientation. So we might see people saying, men are like that when they cheat on their partners. Although, of course, as I said before, there is no scientific basis. Uh, and The other thing I found was that cognitive factors were mentioned in almost two of the comments in the heterosexual men's post. In one of them, it was mentioned with a category, in the other, it was mentioned alone, which shows that heterosexual men have more control over their desires according to casual people. And considering that homosexual men um, uh, were not blamed for their comments didn't have any cognitive factors mentioned, was because on the casual people think that homosexual men do not have desire control on their desires while committing infidelity. So in short, cognitive factors were mentioned in heterosexual men's post because people believe that they have control over their desires, whereas it wasn't mentioned in homosexual men's post because people think that they do not have control over their desires. Interestingly, as I mentioned before, three of the comments in the post about homosexual men mentioned social factors, which again shows that homosexual men do not have any control over their desires according to casual people, normal people. They think that biology and social factors affect homosexual uh, men's desire to cheat, even though cognitive uh, their cognitions can also play a role in their infidelity. And the comments that I included in the other category I didn't mention earlier. For the heterosexual post, I mentioned those comments that said that, like I said before, the post about heterosexual men was written by a woman, and she was asking why heterosexual men cheat. And like there were five comments I found where some users said that women cheat as well, but I included this in as an other category because I do not know whether they were saying men and women go through the same social factors, this is why they cheat, or I didn't understand whether they were saying that men and women have the same biology and this is why they cheat. So I included as the other category. And in the homosexual men's post, the other category included comments by homosexual men saying that they were cheated on their partners or that they cheated on their partners. But again, I couldn't tell whether they were talking about cognitive factors, social factors, or um, biological factors. So, what I could conclude from the comments made by homosexual men in the homosexual post was that they were probably trying to say that cheating is an inevitable part of any relationship. And uh, my attitudes changed a lot while I was doing this study. I found out that men don't only have the desire to have sex while cheating on their wives or girlfriends. They might do so because they just need some emotional satisfaction. And regarding homosexual men, my attitudes change as well because I believe that these men must be more faithful. However, I was wrong. They are actually more likely to cheat. But the reasons that people attach for homosexual men's cheating is blamed on biology and environment rather than on cognition. And one of the reasons could be maybe people are more sympathetic and they do not wish to point out the cognitive factors that might play a role in their infidelity. However, it may play a role in their infidelity. And just to conclude, I also learned a lot in my research. I felt that only social factors play a role in men's infidelity, maybe because they're not spending too much time at home with their wives or girlfriends. But apparently, other factors also play a role. Among them are biological and cognitive factors. And the other thing I saw was that the studies didn't see all three factors, that is cognitive, social, and biological factors together while conducted their studies, and this is one of their weaknesses. And the third thing that I found was that the normal people, casual people that talk on Reddit probably do not have any knowledge on social science, but for some reason they did know what factors played into a person's infidelity, and I just found that interesting. Like, these people probably have a lot of exposure to other people, and this is the reason why they knew about the factors behind infidelity, even if they didn't have any scientific names attached to them. And yeah, my study tried to resolve all these issues by looking all three factors, and I hope it brought a little brought us a little closer to the truth. And it's true that it didn't really answer all the questions, but it could be considered a preliminary research, and as a stepping stone for conducting similar research on homosexual and heterosexual women, or uh, conducting it will be helpful in conducting research on other genders. So I believe it's my study is kind of like a preliminary sort, not really a huge study on its own. And yeah, that's it, and this is the works cited page. So thank you so much for listening to me, and I hope you also learn from this study as much as I did. Thank you. Bye.